When we talk about putting God first, the natural mind wants to reach for a plan. It looks for steps, schedules, systems, something to do. But God is not asking for a system. He's asking for surrender. You can write out your goals. You can reorganize your planner. You can rework your finances. You can say all the right words. But if your heart is still clinging to control, you haven't yet put him first. Surrender is not about weakness. It's about trust. And trust is the currency of the kingdom. God doesn't measure your devotion by how loudly you sing or how early you wake up to pray. He looks at the posture of your heart. Is he on the throne? Or are you still negotiating with him? The moment you surrender, you say, God, I don't just want you to bless my plans, I want you to be the plan. That's putting him first. Too often we confuse surrender with religious performance. We think if we just do more godly things, it will prove to him and to ourselves that he's first. But God is not moved by performance. He's moved by position in your life. Not on Sunday morning, but on Monday afternoon. When the money is tight, when the door closes, when the temptation comes, who makes the final decision in your soul? That's where the truth lies. Surrender is quiet, it's unseen. It's the tear you wipe away after the world is asleep, whispering, Lord, I don't understand, but I trust you. It's the decision to say no to something that feeds your ego, so you can say yes to something that feeds your spirit. It's the willingness to be led into the wilderness if that's where he's calling, because your trust isn't in the destination. It's in the one leading you. Putting God first through surrender means he has veto power over your emotions. It means when your feelings rise up like a storm, his word anchors you in peace. It means when you want to retaliate, he calls you to forgive. When you want to run, he asks you to wait. When you want to climb, he may ask you to kneel. Surrender will break your pride, but it will build your purpose. There is no such thing as partial surrender. God doesn't do second place. He doesn't share the throne. He won't fight you for control. He'll wait until you're weary enough to hand it over. And when you finally do, something beautiful happens. His order begins to replace your chaos. His clarity begins to silence your confusion. His peace begins to govern your decisions. That's the fruit of surrender. You don't surrender because you're strong. You surrender because you realize you can't do it without him. You realize that every time you tried to be first, you fell. Every time you leaned on your own understanding, you got lost. Every time you tried to fix it without him, it broke more. And now finally you're ready to say, God, I give you everything because I've seen what I do with it, and I want what you can do instead. God doesn't just want your Sunday. He wants your soul. He wants to be the first voice you listen to in the morning and the last whisper you hear at night. He wants to walk with you through every room of your life, not just the clean ones. And he'll do it if you'll just surrender. When you truly prioritize God, when he is not just important but preeminent, everything else begins to find its rightful place. Life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes ordered. You stop living by presence, start living by presence. When God is first, you stop reacting to chaos and start responding to his voice. You see, confusion often stems not from too many problems, but from misaligned priorities. The soul becomes disoriented when the Creator is placed anywhere other than first. People often say, I just need better time management, or I need to balance my life. But the truth is, you don't need balance, you need alignment, and alignment starts at the top. When God is first, he begins to filter everything else. Your relationships, your work, your schedule, even your inner thoughts. He doesn't just sit on the throne of your Sunday morning. He begins to reign over your Monday meetings, your Tuesday trials, your Wednesday worries. His lordship reaches into every corner. When you give God the first of your time, suddenly your time becomes more fruitful. When you give God the first of your resources stretch in ways that don't make sense to human logic. When you give God the first say in your decisions, you walk with more peace and less regret. Why? Because God is not only wise, he is wisdom. Many are living in burnout, not because they're doing too much, but because they're doing the wrong things first. They're filling up their day, their mind, their heart with everything but him, and wondering why they still feel empty. You can be busy and still barren. You can be productive and still unfulfilled. But when you prioritize God, he doesn't just add blessing, he gives you clarity. And clarity is priceless. The power of prioritizing God is that it brings divine sequence. And divine sequence brings divine supply. When the children of Israel followed the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, they didn't have to guess where to go, they just followed. God was first. He moved, they moved. He stopped, they stopped. And because of that, they were sustained. Prioritizing God doesn't mean neglecting other responsibilities. It means allowing Him to inform how you carry them. You become a better parent, a wiser leader, a more compassionate friend, not despite putting God first, but because of it. You're no longer led by emotion, driven by fear, or ruled by opinion. You're led by the Spirit, anchored in truth and ruled by peace. So if your life feels like it's spinning, stop and ask, what's first? Not what do I say is first, but what actually is first. What gets the first of my attention, the first of my affection, the first of my choices? Because the real proof of what you prioritize is not in what you claim, but in what you consistently choose. When God becomes your true priority, He begins to sift, sanctify, and straighten what has been out of place for too long. And what was once burdensome becomes blessed. What was once chaotic becomes clear. What was once stressful becomes sacred. All because you chose to put the King back on the throne. Distractions don't always come dressed as sin. Sometimes they come dressed as opportunities, as urgent demands, even as blessings. That's why they're so dangerous. They creep in quietly, shift your focus slightly, and before long what was central becomes peripheral. You didn't mean to drift. You just got busy. You just got tired. You just got caught up in doing instead of being. And now the very presence that used to ground you feels distant, not because God moved, but because your attention did. Distractions are subtle thieves. They don't always steal your faith. Sometimes they just steal your focus. And when your focus is fractured, divine order starts to collapse. God is a God of order. He created the heavens and the earth with perfect alignment. He spoke and light responded. How? He separated sky from sea, placed the stars with precision, and timed the tides. He does nothing randomly. So when your life begins to feel disordered, confused, rushed, or restless, it's often a sign that something else has taken the center where only He belongs. The enemy doesn't have to make you fall to make you ineffective. He just has to make you busy to pray. Too busy to rest, too busy to rest, too busy to hear. He'll flood your life with noise so you can't hear the still small voice. He'll clutter your schedule so you start treating intimacy with God as optional. And slowly, the fire on the altar becomes smoke. The urgency of heaven is replaced by the demands of earth, and divine order is lost. Distractions don't just come externally, they begin internally. The enemy of divine order is not always outside of you, it's often within. It's the wandering thought, the anxious heart, the divided loyalty. It's the addiction to constant stimulation. It's the need to always be seen, always be liked, always be relevant. These things are not always sinful, but they are always noisy, and God speaks clearest in stillness. To maintain divine order, you have to protect your gaze. You can't fix your eyes on Jesus and flirt with every passing thought. You can't chase both purpose and popularity. You can't seek His kingdom and build your own at the same time. The mind set on the Spirit is life and peace. The distracted mind is unstable, double-minded, and easily led astray. Even good things can become distractions when they're out of order. Ministry can distract from intimacy. Family can distract from obedience. Work can distract from worship. The goal isn't to reject everything, but to realign everything. Divine order doesn't mean you abandon life's responsibilities. It means you allow God to dictate their place and priority. He becomes the lens through which everything is filtered. Jesus was never in a hurry, yet He fulfilled His entire mission. Why? Because He only did what He saw the Father doing. He stayed in divine alignment. He wasn't distracted by popularity, pressure, or even pain. He moved with precision because His gaze was fixed. That's our example. So ask yourself, what's pulling at my attention? What's diluting my passion? What's draining my time without feeding my spirit? The presence of distraction is the absence of discernment. When you fail to guard your focus, you forfeit your peace. But when you guard your gaze, order returns, peace returns, power returns, because distraction will always compete for the place where divine order wants to rule. When we say put God first, it's not just a figure of speech. It's a divine principle that governs every area of a surrendered life. First means first. Not second, not when you find time, not when everything else settles down, not when your emotions feel like cooperating. First in time, first in thought, first in trust. That's what it really means to crown him Lord over your life. First in time means he gets the beginning, not the leftovers. Before the phone, before the emails, before the coffee, before the noise of the world rushes in, he gets the first breath of your morning. He becomes your priority, not a task on your list. You don't fit him in. You build your day around him. When God receives the first of your time, your entire day becomes sanctified. You walk through it with clarity, not confusion, with peace, not pressure. That's because divine timing flows from divine honoring. When the first moment belongs to him, he blesses what follows. Then, he must be first in thought. It's not just about giving him your mornings, it's about giving him your mind, your inner world, your decisions, your processing. It's asking, what would please you, Lord? Before you ask, what do I want? It's letting his word be the first filter you run your opinions through. It's consulting the Spirit before you react, before you post, before you speak. When God becomes the first thought instead of the afterthought, wisdom takes the wheel. You are no longer swayed by moods or manipulated by voices that don't carry his truth. Your mind becomes a dwelling place, not a battleground. And most deeply, putting him first means he's first in trust. This is where it gets real. Because it's easy to say a God is firsty until he asks you to wait. Until he says a no. Until he leads you into the unknown. But true trust doesn't require explanations, it just requires obedience. When he's first in trust, you stop making backup plans for his will. You stop treating him like an option. You stop worrying about outcomes because you know the one who's writing the outcome. Trusting him first means you don't panic when doors close. You praise. You don't manipulate to get your way. You surrender. You don't rely on your understanding. You lean into his ksama, and in that posture you begin to live with an unshakable peace. Because no matter what shifts around you, the one you trust never changes. Many people say God is first, but their time, thoughts, and trust are scattered in every direction but him. They consult him last, obey him reluctantly, and give him whatever's left over once their plans fall apart. But he won't be honored like that. He is not a filler. He is not an accessory. He is the king, and kings don't take leftovers. When you honor God with the first, he blesses the rest. Team. That's the pattern throughout Scripture. The first fruits. The firstborn, the first breath of each day, the first act of every decision. These are sacred because they reveal priority, and God watches how you handle the first because it reveals what you truly value. So let this be more than words. Let it be alignment. Let your schedule testify of his lordship. Let your thoughts reflect his nearness. Let your trust reveal his worth. When he is first, he holds everything else together. When he is first, order replaces chaos. When he is first, you no longer chase peace, you live in it. God doesn't push, force, or strive to be first in your life. He waits with patience, but not passivity. He waits with purpose. He waits not because he is weak, but because he is holy. He refuses to share the throne of your heart with your idols, your distractions, or your pride. The one who created time is never rushed. He waits until your hustle wears you down, until your own wisdom fails you. Until you realize that everything you've put before him cannot hold you. Then in his mercy, he gently reminds you, he was there all along. God is not loud. He doesn't scream over the noise. He whispers. He waits for you to make room. He waits until the counterfeit comforts lose their flavor. He waits until the applause stops echoing and the silence begins to speak. And when you finally quiet yourself, you'll find that he never moved. You did. And he's still willing to meet you right where you are if you're willing to make him first again. You see, God doesn't compete for space in your life because he's not one option among many. He is the way, the truth, the life. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't barter for your affection. His worth doesn't decrease when you ignore him, but your peace does. Your clarity does. Your spiritual authority does. Because when God is not first, everything else starts to unravel, even the things that once seemed stable. He is a jealous God, but not with human jealousy. His jealousy is rooted in covenant. He longs for relationship, not performance. He is after your heart, not your hype. And he'll wait until you see that no platform, no relationship, no amount of money, influence, or control can fill the space that only he is worthy to occupy. Sometimes he waits by stepping back. not abandoning you, but allowing you to feel the absence of his order. He allows the weight of your own decisions to press in, not to punish you, but to awaken you, because pain has a way of silencing pride. And when the noise dies down and the Spirit brings you to your knees, you begin to realize you don't want God to compete, you want him to reign, and he'll do it, not in a rush, but in righteousness. He'll restore what your striving has broken. He'll breathe on what your control has suffocated. He'll realign what your anxiety has tangled. But he won't do it while you still treat him like a backup plan. He won't do it while you're still holding on to other gods with one hand and lifting the other to him. He waits for full surrender. That's where he moves. Because God doesn't need your spotlight. He is the light. He doesn't need your schedule to open up. He waits until your soul opens. And when you finally yield, when you finally lay it all down, not just your problems, but your pride, your preferences, your need to manage everything, he steps in, quietly, powerfully, faithfully. And what was delayed starts to flow. What was blocked becomes clear, not because he competed, but because you chose him, not just as savior, but as first.